A very good day to you all. My name is Tawana. I'm a Development Economics Fellow at the Office of Astronomy for Development. Today, I'm going to be talking about the role of science in development. Thank you very much for listening to my talk. So I'll jump straight into the slides. Here we see this picture to start with, which is from Martinez 2018, whereby they are showing the association or the correlation between growth in the number of American Statistical Association sections and important milestones in the science of computing. So as you can see here, as we have an increase in the number of these sections from 0 to slightly above 5 here, we actually see that we have this important breakthrough of statistical computing around the 1970s. As we see growth in these sections, or the growth in the number of statisticians, who are scientists as well, because statistics is a science as well. We actually see this boom around 2010 of machine learning and data science. And a couple of years later, we also see this milestones being achieved in medical devices and genome sequencing, which is quite key as we profile diseases like the coronavirus and others, for example. So we see that these important milestones are important for humanity. So they're important for development. So we see this correlation between science and development. This is just some brief literature overview regarding the importance of science on development. So according to Gordon and Gingras, humanity knows very little about the impact of science. Maybe we can say something about correlation or association, but not necessarily causality. Science makes life easier. It enables societies to pay more attention to ethics, aesthetics, education, and justice, and to create cultures improving human conditions. That according to Beck et al. In 1985. So technological differences, which are influenced by science, also explain cross-country economic growth divergence. And science and technology propagates new occupations, thereby increasing demand for workers with the requisite skill set, particularly in STEM. Bloom et al. Point to diminishing returns to science investment. I mean, some people they look at this, with very high, cynicism, with skepticism, because this is premised on the assertion that science creates low-hanging fruits and humanity has harvested almost all of them. Yet the alternative view of science, presented by Moki 2018, is that science helps humanity reap fruits that we have not yet imagined do exist, since technological advances of the future are difficult to imagine today. So, through these hackathons, through this continuous, science research, science engagement, there's going to be much more technological and science induced, advancement and developments in the future. So science is really important. So they do exist divergent views regarding, the importance or impact of science. So it really, warrants, further research. And there are also divergent views regarding, approaches to measure the effectiveness of particular interventions in their mix. That's according to Crispy. But I'm going to be talking today about the impact of science, what you are doing this hackathon, how it is important for development. I'll just be looking at a few examples. So let's look at the science of astronomy, because I'm coming from an astronomy organization, the Office of Astronomy for Development. So astronomy is naturally relevant to humanity because our identity is linked to the stars. However, the role of astronomy in measuring the role of astronomy in socio-economic development on Earth is not very clear cut, because most of the times astronomers are looking at worlds which are far away from us. So it is difficult to measure the role of astronomy on socio-economic development. So it is against this background that the OAD was formed in 2011. So the OAD is mandated in a nutshell to help translate astronomy into development outcomes, guided by the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, through project funding, organizing and participating activities, such as a conference we held, the Science for Development Conference that was in 2020 actually, and through collaboration with other science organizations, it's like, for example, the RECEP at Stellenbosch University, which is where I'm coming from, which is a group of economists which are looking at measuring the effectiveness of different policies on socioeconomic outcomes. So the OED is headquartered in Cape Town. It's got a small team consisting of a core element and fellows like me, and it coordinates 11 regional offices of astronomy for development across the globe. So it funds astronomy for development projects across the world. So far it is funded, it has disbursed almost 900,000 euros in project funding. We have received more than 1,000 applications and funded almost 160 projects so far in over 90 countries. That's from 2013 until last year. So these are some of the examples of projects which are funded by the OAD. You can, visit this link and have a look yourself. There are loads of interesting things there. So what is the role of science in achieving the sustainable development goals? So we look at ourselves as the OAD, as a science organization, to see, what impact has come through out of all the activities and projects we are doing. So this is just a picture that's showing some of the sustainable development goals in which our activities and projects have, had some level of contribution. So many of our projects, have had an effect on quality education, whereby we inspire young people, young girls in remote communities to do better for themselves, to go into STEM, for example. So by looking at the magnificent scale of the universe and sharing it with people, with students, it motivates them, it inspires them to do better. We have had some projects, for example, in astrotourism, which actually have got a direct economic benefit, but I'll be talking about those things in greater detail. So the role of science in the community. So we've the OAD as a science organization has had an important role to play in the community through projects, as I've said. So out of all these projects, these are diverse projects as long as they've got something to do with using astronomy for to achieve a development related outcome. But we've got what we call flagships. These are sort of the three overarching themes in the projects that we are funding. So for example, the first one is sustainable local socio-economic development through astronomy, where astrotourism is part of. We also have got science diplomacy through astronomy, whereby we're trying to celebrate our common humanity to promote peace, because it's just one earth. This has got something to do with preserving the environment as well, because this is the only place we have that pale blue dot earth. So this is the importance of of astronomy, which is science in diplomacy, in stimulating and preserving peace. Then there's also knowledge and skills for development, whereby we try and transfer some skills that astronomers might have to other disciplines. This might also include, for example, in astronomy at an observatory, visiting a local school and maybe trying to mentor students in high school, for example. So science is important. Scientists have got a role to play in development. So I want to highlight this one project which falls under the flagship of social economic stimulation, whereby observatories, for example, they can stimulate the economy around them. So here I'm going to be presenting this small case study on AstroStays, which is a pilot project which was spearheaded by the Global Himalayan Expedition in the Himalayas. So this is all about it consists of setting up homestays, whereby people who visit the Himalayas, instead of staying in hotels, they stay in homestays, which are in a local village. So a few households have got special rooms, much like a B&B, right? It's in a village where if a visitor comes, they get to serve them, they give them bedding, they serve them food and things, and these people actually pay, and this money stays in the community. And part of that, it also involves stargazing with some telescopes, which were supplied in this area through collaboration with the OAD as well. So we can actually see this astrotourism, we can actually see revenue going into the hands of the community, women benefiting as well. So this is one of the cases in which we are lucky. We can actually clearly see where this money has gone to. And we can actually see that this project of astrotourism in the Himalayas has also had an impact on a number of sustainable development goals. So these are just some pictures which are showing, what a homestay looks like in the bottom right here. And on the top left here, you can actually see some stargazing sessions. So tourists go up these mountains, they actually pay to stargaze, they actually pay to stay in some of, in some of these beautiful AstroStays, thereby stimulating the local economy. So you can see the importance and impact of science at the local level. So if you look at the impact that this project had, so far, it created 6 AstroStays, mini hotels in the village, impacted 30 women who were trained in the 12 differently abled people as well. It raised 3,200, US in a couple of months. And considering the remoteness of this area, this is actually some substantial amount of money, and 670 travelers were engaged. So we see creating money, we see science creating money through astrotourism. So the this project had an important role in reducing inequalities, and it offers a great opportunity for nature-based tourism, and it is relatively cheap to implement. So you can see this importance of science. So science also has got a role to play, particularly with respect to to using remotely sensed data sets. So there's big role to be played by big data. So for example, here I'm looking at satellite imagery. So this is if you look at this picture on the left, this is just before lockdowns were effected at the beginning of the pandemic. So before lockdowns were implemented in Europe, you can see these. So this is night lights data. So night lights are a proxy for economic activity. So we see these bright, red, areas, which means that the economy was working in full throttle before these lockdowns. And a couple of weeks afterwards, when the lockdowns were implemented, you see these lights dimming. So instead of you maybe sending people, enumerators into these areas to sort of interview people in terms of so that you can have an idea of the effect of these lockdowns on economic activity, you can simply rely on night lights, which are provided by these pictures are provided by satellite. So science has had an important role in ensuring that we avail these remotely sensed data sets, which are important in evaluation, as I will also explain in the next slide. So in Africa, we've got the problem of a statistical tragedy whereby governments don't always have the money or the political will to to create or to send people out into the field to collect surveys, to do census, on a timely basis. So we can actually use some of these remotely sensed data sets. So this is the role of science. It allows economists and other social scientists to conduct small area analysis to evaluate policies, whether agricultural policies are having the intended effects. We can just use some satellite data, use machine learning, and we can actually get some data on crop cultivation, and we can actually see what's happening at the community level. So this is actually science. So this is important, and another important role that's played by science. So if you look at this, if you look at the global Himalayan expedition example I was just talking about on the left here, right? So one could actually use some satellite imagery. So say, for example, as we have more tourists coming to this area to stargaze, to stay in these astro stays, this might, for example, induce an increased demand for food because these tourists need to eat, right? So these farmers might decide to to put more land under cultivation, and we can see that using satellite images. So if we see this, so we implement an astrotourism project in this part of the world, for example, and we see that after a couple of 2-3 years, we're actually seeing that agricultural activity is expanding through this satellite imagery, then we can say, oh, look, this has been the impact of science. It has actually created a demand, increased the demand for agricultural products, which is a positive impact. So science has got a role to play, and we are actually measuring this using satellite imagery, which is another derivative of science advancements. In Sutherland, for example, in South Africa, we've got this observatory where it was the Sutherland town hosts the Southern Africa Large Telescope. So people throng this place to just have a look at the infrastructure, have a tour around this massive telescope, and also to do stargazing at night, right? So one might then use this night lights data, the example I was just showing you about Europe. So one can use this night lights data to see whether economic activity is being stimulated around this observatory, although the problem might be that astronomy is a dark skies science, so you might not necessarily see what we are looking for if you are using night lights data. So this is what I was just saying. We did this experiment where we tried to see whether night lights or economic activity increased before and after the implementation of this Southern Africa Large Telescope SALT in 2005. So we look at lights before and after 2005 because SALT was launched in 2005, but we don't quite see some good results because astronomy is a dark skies science. So Sutherland, which takes the value of 1 here, the treatment town actually has got less lights compared to other surrounding towns, which take a value of 0 here. So astronomy is a dark, sky science. So we might have some disappointment sometimes, but I think in other places we can be able to actually use science technology to measure socioeconomic change at the local level using, remotely sensed data. So science has got a role to play also in application programming. So if we look at unemployment, for example, there's this type of unemployment called frictional unemployment, which occurs as a person moves from one job to another. So when you switch jobs, if you become unemployed, as you look for another job, you don't have the perfect information in terms of where exactly you can get the job. The employer is out there is looking possibly looking for you, but there isn't a perfect match. So you might spend months and months looking for another job, yet there's somebody out there who has got the right job, the perfect job for you. So by developing an app, for example, scientists, who are good at programming can program an app that links, the attributes of the job seeker to what the employer requires. Of course, we do have a number of employment search application, things like that. But I think much more can be improved and streamlined in terms using machine learning, citizen science, and but some of these things are in operation already. But this is science in action. So science, it can reduce information on health information asymmetries, for example. So we've got this quote here that says, despite remarkable progress, 15,000 children and 800 women still die every year, mostly because of preventable or treatable causes. Why do these people die? Because they don't have the right information. By this application programming, we can ensure that information is at the fingertips of communities, through maybe, SMS alerts or some other kind of media of communication that can be made possible through science and working together. We can actually reduce this burden of 15,000 children, 800 women dying every day. So another important role, an important area where science, can come through is very important, is in terms of reducing monopolies. So a monopoly is a situation whereby we've got one supplier who's supplying a particular product. So if you look at the market for PPE, for example, personal protective equipment, which has been made a lot of hullabaloo, during this coronavirus pandemic, it's a situation whereby, let's assume there's one supplier, right? So if there's one supplier, then there's going to be shortages, right? Why do we have one supplier? Sometimes it's because he or she is the only person with the right information. He or she is the person with the formulas on how to make PPE, right? But by ensuring that we make science open source, we make code, we get code out there, lab results, are publicized, science experiments, science research, all these things are made available. It ensures that we've got more people who can actually be producing goods and services, thereby reducing monopolies and ensuring that we've got adequate demand, we've got adequate supply of essential commodities. If you look at the vaccine development effort, for example, you see that there have been many actors in this fold. We've seen many research and private organizations which are all working to produce a coronavirus pandemic. Why has this been possible? It's because over these years, when the pandemic started, people put their heads together, scientists, and out of that science, out of that research, they managed to sequence the coronavirus and they managed to develop vaccines. So this is unprecedented, and it's made possible by science. So science is important. It reduces imperfect competition. It ensures that we've got more supply of vaccines in this instance. I should say I haven't been vaccinated yet, although, right? So what is the conclusion? The future is bright. The future is young. It's in your hands as young scientists to influence the change. Thank you very much for listening to my talk, and good luck. Thank you.